The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, or the Soviet Union, was the world's first socialist state and a global superpower that shaped the 20th century. For competitive exams, it is crucial to understand its ideological foundation, its administrative structure, and the systemic causes of its collapse. 1. Origin and establishment. The USSR was born out of the chaos of World War I and the internal collapse of the Russian Empire. The Russian Revolution, 1917, led by Vladimir Lenin and the Bolshevik Party, the revolution overthrew the Tsarist autocracy and later the provisional government. Formation, 1922, following a brutal civil war, the USSR was officially established via the Treaty on the Creation of the USSR. Founding republics. The original treaty was signed by the Russian SFSR, Transcaucasian SFSR, Ukrainian SSR, and Belarusian SSR. 2. Membership and geography. At its height, the USSR was the largest country in the world, spanning 11 time zones and consisting of 15 union republics, Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Eastern Europe, Belarus, Moldova, Ukraine. Caucasus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia. Central Asia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. Russia, the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, RSFSR. 3. Key features and functions. Ideology, based on Marxism-Leninism. It featured a one-party system led by the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, CPSU. Command economy. The state owned all means of production. Centralized planning was managed through 5-year plans, a concept India later adopted. Political structure. Theoretically a federation of republics, but in practice, it was highly centralized with power resting in the Politburo in Moscow. Military alliance. Formed the Warsaw Pact, 1955, as a counterbalance to NATO during the Cold War. 4. Why did the USSR break? 1991, the collapse of the USSR was not a single event but a culmination of political, economic, and ethnic pressures. A. Economic stagnation. The command economy became inefficient. By the 1970s and 80s, the era of stagnation saw severe shortages of consumer goods, low productivity, and a massive portion of the GDP being diverted to the military-industrial complex to keep up with the US in the arms race. B. Gorbachev's reforms. Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the USSR, introduced 2 radical policies intended to save the system, which instead accelerated its end: glasnost, openness, increased freedom of speech and press. This allowed citizens to openly criticize the government and expose past atrocities, like Stalin's purges. Perestroika, restructuring, attempted to introduce limited market elements into the economy, which caused temporary economic chaos and inflation. C. Rise of nationalism. As glasnost took hold, long-suppressed ethnic tensions surfaced. The Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, were the first to demand independence, followed by Ukraine and the Caucasus. D. The failed August coup, 1991, hardline communists attempted to overthrow Gorbachev to stop his reforms. The coup failed, but it destroyed the authority of the central government and elevated Boris Yeltsin, President of the Russian Republic, as a new power center. E. The Belaveja Accords. On December 8, 1991, the leaders of Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus met and declared that the USSR ceased to exist. They formed the Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS. On December 25, 1991, Gorbachev resigned, and the Soviet flag was lowered from the Kremlin for the last time. 5. Summary table for competitive exams. Aspect. Key detail. First leader. Vladimir Lenin. Longest-serving leader. Joseph Stalin. Last leader. Mikhail Gorbachev. Capital. Moscow. Currency. Soviet ruble. Major rivalry. The Cold War versus USA and NATO, successor state. The Russian Federation inherited the USSR's UN Security Council seat. Interrelated fact: impact on India. The collapse of the USSR was a major shock to India. The USSR had been India's largest trading partner and a key military supplier, evidenced by the 1971 Indo-Soviet Treaty of Friendship. The dissolution forced India to diversify its foreign policy and accelerate its own economic liberalization in 1991.